Hi guys, it's Matilda, and today I'm going to talk about what exactly is Bitcoin mining. So you may have heard the word used a lot, especially talking about Bitcoin or blockchain in general, but maybe you don't really know what they are talking about when they say mining. Basically, the word is just using to describe the process when a new block is added to the blockchain. So the miners will work to solve a puzzle in order to add a block to the blockchain, and when they do that, they receive mining fee, which is paid out in the form of Bitcoin. So like gold, there's a limited number of Bitcoin to be mined, which is supposed to emulate the real-world scarcity of something like gold and potentially create value. So what do you actually do when you mine for Bitcoin? Like, what does that actually mean? Because if we talk about mining for gold, you can picture it like people in hard hats, they go underground, they like dig for gold or they extract something out of the ground, right? But obviously you don't do that for digital currency. So how does it actually work? In one of my other videos, I broke down the basics of the blockchain. So actually what's in each block within the blockchain. So just as a reminder, in a block there are multiple different data points. You have your block header, you have the hash of the previous block header, you have a timestamp, you have a nonce, you have a Merkle root, and then you have all of the transactions within that block. So when you talk about mining, the most important part of the block really is the nonce. So the nonce is a random number used one time. And the reason why this is important is because this is really what the miners are trying to figure out. So for gold, you're physically digging in the ground for gold, right? But then in the case of the Bitcoin blockchain, what you're doing is solving cryptographic hash puzzles. So all of the data that I just talked about that is within the block is actually going to be hashed. So your header, your previous hash of the header, blah, 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 they're all going to be hashed in one line of numeric digits or characters, right? And so the hash could be something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Just to have an easy example. Let's say we take all of the data within that block and then we hash it, and that hash is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So like gold, in order to emulate the scarcity of the gold, in the Bitcoin blockchain, what they do instead is that they make solving these cryptographic hash puzzles harder over time. So because computing power is going to get better and better and better, they need to make the cryptographic hash puzzles more difficult and more time consuming in order to replicate scarcity. So when you mine, you're solving these hash puzzles using computing power like your GPUs or your ASICs. And the difficulty of these puzzles will basically simulate the scarcity that you find in mining gold today. Okay, so let's get back to solving hash puzzles. So say we take our block that we're trying to put onto the blockchain, right? We have our block header, we have the hash of the previous block header, we have our Merkle root, we have our timestamp, we have all the transaction details, and then we also have a nonce, right? So all of that data is going to be hashed into one of my examples earlier, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And maybe the cryptographic puzzle is built in a way that we want to have a hash that starts with 2 zeros. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we want 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, or 0, 0, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really matter, but what we're looking for in order to solve the puzzle is to have a hash where the first 2 digits are 0. So I'm really simplifying it down, but this really is a general idea of what solving a hash puzzle means. So all of the data that I was talking about that goes into the block and that's hashed into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you change any piece of the data, like you delete a space, you add another word, change a value, all of that will generate a new hash. So let's say as part of the transactions, I give you $10, right? So this is part of the transactions that's in our block, and then we will hash that into our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? But then let's say I go back to the transaction and I change it. Oh, instead, it's not me giving you $10, I'm gonna give you $9. If I go back and make the change in the data, I'm not gonna hash 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm gonna hash like X, Y, 0, blah, blah, blah. So any of the data that you change within that block is going to hash out to a completely different random set of numbers and variables. So when we're solving the cryptographic hash puzzle, obviously we're not going to change any of the transaction data. We're not going to be able to change the block header. We're not going to be able to change the hash of the previous block header. But what we can change is the nonce of that block. So that random number used once. So let's say I have all my transactions. I send you $10, I send you $5, I send you $1. And then our nonce is n equals 1. And then that hashes to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that doesn't work, right? Because we're looking for something that starts with 0, 0, blah, blah, blah. So then we go back to all of our transactions, our same block header, our same hash of the previous block, but then we change the nonce equal to 2. And then that hashes out into XY 1, 2, 8, something like that, right? And that still doesn't work. So then we go back and we just keep on changing the nonce 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until we end up with a hash that starts with 0, 0, blah, blah, blah. And that's basically all the miners are doing. They're just using all their computing power to go through all of the random numbers until they solve the puzzle, meaning that they solve the puzzle that requires for the first 2 digits to start with 0, 0, and then whatever. So maybe by the time they reach random number equals 1111, then the hash will actually turn out to be 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. So that means they solve the puzzle, the block gets to be added to the blockchain, and then the miners get their mining reward as a form of Bitcoin. So of course, when we talk about computing power that the miners use, there are environmental concerns, and there's also concerns of mining pools that are being created in countries that are not so democratic. But I talk about those in other videos. So if you're interested, you can go and check them out. And at least for this video, I hope that has helped you with some of your questions. And if you have other questions, you can leave them in the comment and I'll try to answer them. Until then, talk to you guys later. Bye!